Hey, what's up guys? My name is Swiss, but I'm better known as Smash Dad in the Smash community, or Smash Poppy. In case you don't know, I did recently change my tag throughout the beginning of the year when the rankings came out. And today I just want to bring this video where I talk about how to get better at the game, or in other words, learn the fundamentals of the game. It is 2023. A lot of people still trying to improve despite of how the melee situation is going on right now. Within the past couple of months, there's been a small decline where, like, you know, there's been a couple of sponsors leaving us. There's a couple of tournament series as well leaving, and maybe on the other end, there's a couple of top players, you know, becoming inactive, and well, it can seem a little demoralizing. But I would say if you've been quite long enough in the Smash scene, at least maybe approximately 5 years, more or less, you might have noticed that, you know, Melee has been declining, you know, every now and then, but somehow has always managed to pick up its feet back again. So I wouldn't worry too much about that and just focus on the goals that you have in mind. Now, I do want to clarify that before we get into the video, is that of course there's still a lot of videos out there that kind of like try to cover the same thing and how to get better. A lot of top players actually talk about the same things. You know, sometimes like the information that these top players say, you know, they kind of overlap with each other. You know, I mean, my video is the same case. There's certain information that does certainly overlap, but you know, you don't always like understand like what you're being told throughout these videos. You know, sometimes it does take a couple other sources until, you know, the information finally clicks, and hopefully my video can help you out, you know, get where you want to be or understand something that you weren't understanding before. So that's the goal, and that's pretty much it for an intro. So I don't want to keep holding you guys back. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Melee. So many unforgettable moments it has given us. Given its 22 years of age, the game has managed to survive this long despite being on the verge of dying multiple times. Regardless of the several declines, there's still plenty of Melee to play, as long as there's still motherfuckers to beat. Alright, so before we're able to get good at Melee or any other Smash game, is to try and understand the fundamentals well from the game. Many times people confuse these fundamentals with having tech skill. Even though tech skill is a very important requirement, you don't always need to polish everything 100%. Assuming you already have the necessary tech skill with your main character, then we can go ahead and talk more about the importance of fundamentals and how you can apply it. In order to better understand these fundamentals as best as possible, I will break down everything to 3 categories, which are Punish Game, Neutral Game, and Edgeguarding. In case you've been playing Melee for a while, then this shouldn't be anything new for you. However, just because you're aware of these fundamentals doesn't mean you necessarily know how to carry them out efficiently. For instance, there's a reason why some top players can pick other characters and do well with them in a short amount of time. It's not always because they carry a broader sense of knowledge over these fundamentals, even though it's part of it, but mainly because they're much more cleaner with their execution in each one of these areas. There are several people outside of the top 100 that actually have good ideas about the game, but are not necessarily always sharp with all of their fundamentals, meaning they tend to drop a lot of their execution most of the times. If we analyze the top player styles such as Wisropes, he's a perfect example that reflects each one of these fundamentals throughout his gameplay. He may not be as flashy as SJ, Nun, or any of the other Falcons, yet he's much more consistent and concise than the others, simply because he keeps it simple instead of trying to overextend unnecessary moves with the intent of trying to style on people. Therefore, you'll usually want to develop a simple game plan when starting out that can allow you to be more consistent whenever you're trying to get your neutral openings, executing a punish sequence, or hitting an edge guard successfully. In case you still want to aim for swag, then I recommend doing so only after you build a solid game plan first. That way, you'll always have a backup game plan in case any of your overextensions are not working out. Overall, it's all about discipline, and hopefully, this video can give you a better idea on what to work on, whether you're new to the game or have been playing the game already for a while. Like any other fighting game, the punish game or combos are an essential part of Melee. When you're trying to compete in a game to win, you want to make sure to have the advantage against your opponent as much as possible. The punish game is one way to gain the advantage, and without them, you're only limiting yourself in playing the game as best as possible. Although, one important thing to keep in mind is that there are no true combos in Melee or any other Smash game. This is due to the fact that all combos can be skippable with DI, or when your opponent starts getting hit much higher percentages. But that doesn't mean you can't find other ways to continue putting damage towards your opponents once you let go. A couple of ways you can always use to help you extend your combos in Melee are through tech chasing, chain grabbing, sharking, or even reads. Obviously, we still have to keep into account the different matchups in the game when trying to apply combos. Even if you can't always apply big punishes against every character, knowing mini combos can still be extremely useful to help you gain a better lead. Ultimately, your goal should be to kick your opponent out of the stage one way or another. But you can't expect to get kills at low percentages all the time, and that's when the punish game is very helpful. So, if you think you lack the punish game with your character, I definitely recommend grinding more solo practice with Uncle Punch, instead of hopping into a session with someone every single time you sit down to play Melee. Your main goal should be to develop reactions that can help you execute punishes whenever you're trying to play a serious set. Oftentimes, many players expect to develop this fundamental while playing friendlies, but usually that's not a good way to gain the best results. Just like if you were expecting to get in shape without working out and dieting, or you just do one and your progress is very slow. In case you don't have any idea how to carry out punishes in a matchup, you can always refer to any multiple combo videos out there on YouTube to get started. Another common reason the majority of people fail to develop a punish game is due to the fact of not knowing their percentages and not understanding a character's hitbox as well, especially when dealing with DI. Yet, a common video of your character should be a good enough example to give you an idea on how to start your own punishes and eventually master this fundamental with enough practice. Okay, so the neutral is a very extensive part of the game, and I won't be able to cover everything in this video. For that, you can always look up more information about it on your own through other sources such as SSBM tutorials, Discord channels, discussing with your friends, or even through a MetaFi coach. Just so you know, I am on MetaFi, and in case you don't want to look up all of this information through all the scattered resources online, you can always look into my Melee improvement guide on MetaFi. It's only a one-time payment of $15, and I intend to keep updating it so that all purchasers can continue learning as best as possible. Either way, all of this information I put in the description below in case you want to learn more about any of these resources. Otherwise, I will try my best in giving you a general idea on how you can improve in the neutral game. To get started, the first thing you want to look after when you're playing neutral are openings. The first mistake everyone does when they're learning a new fighting game is button mashing or spamming. I myself am guilty of this and do it quite frequently at times. Then again, I am a Fox player. Fox usually can get away with a lot of button mashing in the form of shield pressure or execution testing. But if you're trying to apply pressure with other characters, then this might not work for you, and that's why you want to work on learning openings instead. Each character will have their own forms of openings, but as soon as you are able to get on top of your opponent, then you want to make sure to convert as much as possible those openings into punishes. In order to have an idea of getting an opening, you have to understand counters that can be applied with your character against different matchups. Let me give you a brief example. A lot of openings can be accomplished by whiff punishing in the game, and frankly, not a lot of people know how to get around it. Whiff punishing can be seen as a counter from among different forms of neutral, but what do you think whiff punishing can be countered against? Well, you can always throw an overshoot attack to counter it. So now you may be asking yourself, well, how do I counter an overshoot? There are still multiple ways, but one solution I can give is that you can always throw a non-committal attack or an undershoot to beat the overshoot. If we keep asking the same question on what counters what in this example, then we are already talking about mix-ups. A mix-up is just another word for playing RPS or rock, paper, scissors, because again, nothing in the game is guaranteed, just like I mentioned how punishes are not guaranteed either. That's when you have to play the neutral game on what Smash players tend to call the 50-50 situations. In other words, everything in the game is counterable. So, if you're having issues hitting your opponent, or you're getting hit almost every single time in the same way, then it's probably because you don't know the counter to what your opponent is doing. Therefore, you want to always have a number of neutral counters to get an opening against your opponent in the neutral game. Just keep in mind that you don't always have to play the mix-up game unless your opponent proves to you that they know how to get around your moves. Otherwise, you will confusing yourself more in the neutral game, and honestly, you don't always have to think too hard when you're playing against less experienced players. Once you understand this neutral approach well, and know how to find different counters for different neutral situations, then you should be able to focus more on the punish game and edgeguarding game. If you played Smash long enough, then you should know the importance of edgeguarding in the game. The more options you have, the better. The only question you should be asking yourself is, are you clean enough in closing down your stocks? If not, you should probably focus more on this area, because if you don't, then possibly another player might take your stocks faster before you do. That is why you want to try to be as consistent as much as possible with your edge guards. And to do that, you simply have to practice them more, or try to find out if maybe other players are executing edge guards that you aren't even doing yet, and try to implement that into your play. In other scenarios where you really can't edge guard easily in the matchup, such as against floaties, you can always resort for kill setups that you can conduct while on the stage. A kill setup will typically consist of a mini combo that often leads to another attack that can kill your opponent. Obviously, you don't always have to look for the same kill setup, because otherwise, you will become predictable and your opponent will always try to avoid it. However, the more kill setups you have, the less predictable you'll be when trying to take a stock. Generally, kill setups not only applies to floaty characters, but also against other characters as well. In my own personal experience, sometimes who wins more is not always determined by who has a greater punish game or neutral game, but instead, who's able to clean up stocks more consistently. On a side note, how well you recover is important too, because if you're always coming back to the stage the same way once you're off stage, then it's like putting yourself on the open for someone to steal from you if you're too careless leaving your belongings unattended anytime you go out. Likewise, you want to treat your recoveries the same way like your belongings by mixing up different ways of coming back to the stage safely. Just to give a quick recap, you want to know a number of openings for every matchup with your character when playing neutral. Execute a punish as much as possible as soon as you get that opening, and try to close your stocks as often as possible whenever your opponent is off stage. Usually that's the order you want to take all the time, but realistically, that doesn't always happen. For example, sometimes you will go from a successful neutral exchange to an edge guard. Other times, you might go from an edge guard to a punish, and in other cases, you might have to go from neutral to punish a couple times until you're able to get that edge guard. The list goes on, but the main point you have to take from all of this is to learn how to transition from one area to another. If you can do that with the least amount of transitions, then you will have the greatest success against your opponents. Therefore, you have to become sharp enough within each fundamental in every matchup. There's really not much to it other than that when it comes to improving. You just gotta know which fundamental you're weak on and try to work on that. Once you start improving, top players won't seem as hard, but you gotta make sure to clean your execution as much as possible as well. Just keep in mind that in order to keep your execution in shape, you do have to play regularly, or at least enough, because any long breaks, depending on which character you main, may affect you. Alright guys, so we finally reached the end of the video, and I hope you all learned a lot. Now, I do want to point out that I am well aware that probably this video was pretty short. There's still a couple more things that can be said, especially in the neutral section, but it was intended that way. I intended for this video to be kind of short, you know, concise, but yeah, short. And the reason for that is that if I would have added more information, you know, on top of what I already talked about, in my opinion, I think your mind would have drifted pretty quickly and you wouldn't pick up on the information being given. So in that case, I decided to, for now, to kind of break down everything that I want to talk about and then release it later on. That way you can get the best learning experience out of all of this. And even though I do have some of my ideas in mind for me to work on for a next video, you know, this is just the starting point from what I'm trying to do. So I do want to say that if you do have some opinions, you know, some things that you might have wished that you would have seen in this video that I would have talked about, you know, you're always welcome to provide any comments or feedback, you know, throughout this video or below this video. And I'll later on go ahead and just read those comments and see what you guys would like to see next. You know, try to prioritize, you know, what would be more useful for you guys. But in the meantime, I would say if you did find this video useful, you know, make sure to share with your friends, and especially those that have been struggling for a while. In case I do decide to release another video later on, you know, sometime soon, I don't know when. These kinds of videos do take a good amount of time. I'm not gonna lie, it did take me a while. So I would say in the meantime, why not subscribe to this channel, and also, you know, try to follow me on Twitter, because that's the first place where I'm going to be posting when I do release another video like this. And in case you still have questions about anything that I talked about and you want me to elaborate a little bit further, or, you know, a little bit sooner than until I do release something else, then you're always welcome to reach out to me on Metafy. But anyways, that's all the information I have so far. If you have reached the end of this video, then I do want to say thank you for watching, and until next time, peace.